If I were to ask you to describe to me how you identify yourself, what is your self-identity? What would you say? Would you say, this is my profession, this is what I do? Or would you go deeper and say, I identify myself as someone who cares for people, someone who takes care of myself? The stories that we use to identify ourselves play a bigger role in our lives than we've ever really even fully understood. Until you're trying to break a habit or a pattern, you realize, I don't know why this habit isn't sticking. I don't know why I can't break this or create this. It's because it's much deeper. You have to change your identity. That's what has to shift first for everything else to follow. And that's why it's very important to be able to tell me, if I'm asking you this question straight up, how do you identify yourself? Because if you're not aware of the way in which you're describing yourself to yourself, then you might not even be aware of why you are repeating certain things or unable to fulfill certain dreams and goals. So, I've recently started to identify as a runner. Yes, I go running and walk because your girl is conditioning her lungs. But I still go run. I am a runner. I identify as a runner. And for that reason, when I wake up in the morning and I'm thinking, I don't really know that I feel like doing this, I do it anyways because I identify as a runner. I identify myself as a cyclist. So therefore, I just bought a road bike, upgraded from my little cruiser bike. Don't worry, I also upgraded my helmet for everyone who cares. And I've been riding 20 plus miles because now I identify as that. And I'm the person who now shows up to those routines and habits to build that identity. I identify as a therapist, but beyond that, I identify as an intuitive therapist. And when I say that, more often than not, people are like, what does that even mean? Well, I'm about to tell you. To me, it means I don't know ever what my client sessions are going to look like. I will review our past sessions, or I'll look over their intake appointments on their first appointment, but I don't really rely on that. I rely on my intuition to meet the client in every individual session and know that I'm going to know what the right questions are, what the right guidance is, the right space and cadence, because I identify as an intuitive therapist. I don't even question myself. It's just something that I hold in full belief. And because of that, I end up finding evidence of this to be true over and over again. Now, if I identified as somebody who was just a little bit anxious all the time, like I once did, I'd be questioning myself still to this day. I used to identify as anxious. I identified as anxiety. I identified as OCD. None of those are my identity. They're all things that I have had to work through. And now I identify as somebody who, sometimes I might feel anxious, but guess what? More importantly, I identify as a person who believes in herself to meet whatever life is bringing. I identify as somebody who trusts that there is a solution to whatever problem the world is bringing me, whether it's actually a problem or I'm perceiving it as a problem. Usually the latter. But I identify as someone who's going to figure it out. And guess what? I now have loads and loads of evidence to prove the fact to be true. Does that mean that I don't ever feel anxious and my OCD doesn't ever act up? No, of course not. It means if I have an intrusive thought, if I have a rumination, if I have a compulsion, because I identify as a person who can manage all of these symptoms, know exactly what to do, which is usually go for a walk, make some art, call a friend, journal. I identify as somebody who has tools to manage the things that come at me. I'm never going to be pompous enough to believe that abracadabra, it's gone forever. Life is life. Life sometimes actually brings genuine, authentic things that bring us anxiety and things that are scary and things that do make us sad. That's the reality. I never want to be a person that's like, I'm never going to feel a bad feeling ever again, so help me. That's not real. But I am a person who can sit in my feelings. That's how I identify. I'm a person who knows how to navigate the heaviness of life without it collapsing me. I am a person who also remembers that even in the midst of whatever heavy there is, there's still beauty, there's still awe, there's still wonder and inspiration and hope and things to be thankful for. And so therefore, I see it all around me. And I believe that in my core because I identify as somebody who is able to see it all. So when I ask you, what do you identify as? It's an important question because if you identify yourself as somebody who is, I'm always anxious, I'm never on time, I'm anxiously attached, or I am avoidant, I am whatever, any of the list of things, it is way too common now for us to build our identities around our struggles. And us to build our identities around our past versions of ourselves, right? I used to identify as a hot mess. I identified as disorganized and chaotic. But really, the truth is, I'm fun. I'm focused. I am able to do anything I set my mind to. And I'm a free spirit. That's a much different story, which is going to bring me much different results than being like, ooh, I'm a hot mess. So, if you are identifying yourself as something that is perhaps an old story or perhaps not the full story, right? When I was saying, oh, I identify as an anxious person, was I feeling anxiety? Absolutely. But was I an anxious person? No. Was that the story I was telling myself? So therefore I was finding evidence of it over and over again and believing that I was going to crumble every single time I went into public? But as soon as I identified as somebody who was going to be able to handle the way I felt uncomfortable in social situations, who was going to be able to handle doing new things, and then I started to put myself in those situations because I believed I could, and then I built enough evidence to see, oh my gosh, I am the person that can go do these things. I'm not anxious. I'm a girl who sometimes experiences anxiety. Completely different identities. So you are trying to create a new habit, break an old habit, break an old pattern, pursue a goal, and you keep finding yourself running against a wall. Maybe, perhaps, you need an identity shift. Our identities are fluid. They're not fixed. You can change it at any time. You can always identify as somebody who is capable of pursuing their dreams. You can always identify as a person who accomplishes the thing they say they're going to do. You can identify as being a person who says they want to do something and then they go and do it. You can. You can identify as a runner even when you have to go walking half of your run. I still identify as a runner. You can shift your identity at any time, which then helps you show up more in alignment with the goals and the habits and all of the things that it takes to feed and build that identity. And everyone is capable of this. So if you didn't think you were capable of this, perhaps this is your invitation to realize that everyone is. And the real thing is, once you figure out, oh, I'm identifying as somebody who doesn't know how to complete a project because my ADHD gets in the way, or I identify as somebody who is a little scattered. Ask, what would happen if you identified as somebody who was able to follow through? And what if all it took was just a little more support, a little more focus, a little more structure? Because you're scattered, does that mean you have to identify as a person who's scattered? Or perhaps you can identify as someone who can be focused with the right structure, routines, and rhythms in life.